this last session is going to be on the topic of energy poverty, and specifically on targeting households at risk of energy poverty, which is going to be an increasingly important aspect, I think, of energy efficiency policy as we come into the next 7 years of the Energy Efficiency Directive. Because one of the things that member countries are going to have to do is to work out who their priority groups are to meet the sub-target set out in the EED, and then not just who they are, but then how to find them. So we're going to have 2 presentations, and then it's going to be open to this room to talk about France. So have a think about what you might want to say about experience in France of delivering the précarité part of the White Certificate programme. But first of all, we're going to have presentations from Ireland and first of all from the UK. And we have 2 speakers from the Energy Savings Trust, Abigail Ward and Harry Myers, who are going to be talking about their experience at the Energy Savings Trust with energy poverty alleviation programmes and engagement approaches. So Abigail, over to you.
Great. Thanks, everyone. I hope you've all had some coffee and sugar to get us through the next last stint of the day. So we're here today just to give an insight into some of the schemes we deliver, which target fuel poor households by improving their homes, as they're typically harder to reach. And yeah, we've got a few services to go through that we can share with you. So firstly, in case you don't know who we are, Energy Saving Trust is a mission-led organisation trying to tackle the climate crisis while also doing this in a just way. And we deliver several programmes across the UK for the different governments, as we'll get into. And our kind of specialist expertise is around information and advice for consumers on their net zero journey. So firstly, I thought it would be beneficial for you to see how fuel poverty is across the UK. So fuel poverty is a devolved issue in the UK, which means that each of the 4 nations have different definitions of fuel poverty and also have different strategies and programmes to try and alleviate them. So this makes it quite difficult to compare how we're doing as a whole in the UK, but you can generally see what the makeup of this is. And obviously this isn't also taking into account the energy crisis, and some fuel poverty charities in the UK are saying that on average in January of next year will be at about 25% across the UK of fuel poor households. So a big challenge. And then also these are the fuel poverty schemes that again are taken by the different nations. You heard from the Department of Energy, the Eco programme, and there are some other ones there that I won't go into just for time purposes. And then so I'm going to talk about what we do in Wales, and then Harry, my colleague, is going to talk about what we do in Scotland. So firstly, I'm going to talk about the Nest Advice Scheme that we run on behalf of the Welsh Government. So it provides funds for energy efficiency improvements for low-income households, as well as vulnerable households, for those with health conditions. And as well as offering this, it also offers more holistic energy advice to all households in Wales, so they don't have to be fuel poor to come to the service. But if they are fuel poor, what they'll get, if they're eligible, is a package of free home energy efficiency improvements to help lower their bills, and help take them out of fuel poverty. And what Nest also does is offers signposting to any other schemes that households might be eligible for that they're not aware of. And this also includes benefit entitlement checks from the welfare state as well, which a key part of fuel poverty is in maximising people's income as well. So this is the typical journey that a household will go through when they come through the Nest service. So yeah, as I said, if they're eligible for home energy efficiency improvements, these are some of the measures that they can be entitled to as part of the scheme. And it's on offer to owner occupiers and private renters as well. So it's quite a wide pool of eligible households that can get this support. So they just have to be fuel poor, low income, or have a health condition that means that they would benefit from the scheme. And I thought it's good to know how we reach these fuel poor, because obviously they're typically more hard to reach communities. That's the case for many countries. So there's a few strategies that Nest use to really reach these fuel poor. So obviously promotion on digital channels, which is the generic one to do. But as we all know, fuel poor households rarely have as much digital access as other households might do. So the programme works with local authorities. So they did a programme where they coordinated a mail campaign, sent out letters to everyone, and that meant that vulnerable households were reached, and they contacted Nest. Our partnership development managers go to outreach events, so cost of living roadshows, local council events, to spread the message about Nest, to make sure that people are aware of it. And then also partnerships is a key part of the programme as well, as it is in Scotland, as Harry will go into. So working alongside partners really furthers the reach and make sure that people who are in vulnerable situations, so older people or those in marginalised communities, are also made aware of the support. And as you can see, because of the energy crisis in particular, Nest helped over 22,000 households last year and saved an average £422 on energy bills per year. And the extra benefit entitlement is really stark as well, and it's simply just signposting people to support that they're already entitled to but might not know about. And then the second scheme I'm just going to briefly talk about is Power Up. So this is a partnership between National Grid and Energy Saving Trust, and there's 4 advice hubs across Wales. Again, provides free and impartial energy efficiency advice to help consumers lower their energy bills. And then the key part of this scheme is that it helps those who could be potentially vulnerable to power cuts. So if I go onto this slide, so the Priority Services Register is something that the National Grid uses so that they can understand which households are vulnerable to any power cuts that happen, and that they can be given extra support if they need it. So, for example, those that have a sight or hearing impediment or have a chronic illness, which means that they're particularly vulnerable to if a power cut comes off, and that means that they're kind of given special help. So there are some of the kind of key support measures that are given to these customers to ensure that they're not left in the cold, and obviously it could be made worse by their conditions. So yeah, there's a few of benefits there. And then this is a generic slide on what advice and support is offered by Power Up, very similar to Nest, and Nest and Power Up work together to make sure that any households that might be eligible for Nest are also put in contact, and vice versa for Power Up. So that was a whistle-stop tour of Wales. I'll hand over to Harry for Scotland.
Thank you, Abby. Hi, everyone. This is definitely, as we would say in Great Britain, the graveyard shift now. So if you're still with us, thank you for your attention. I'll try and keep it. So yeah, this is about the framework and the way we do things in Scotland. So it's nothing to do with the obligation as such, but I guess it's important, why we're telling you this afternoon. It's important because if you need to find a way to reach fuel poor households or energy poor households, it doesn't matter whether you're trying to reach obligation targets or you're trying to reach government targets, the frameworks and the networks that you need to adopt are still very much the same. So some of what we do here in Scotland and across the UK that Abby's described, I guess, will be of relevance. And, it's slightly sad in a way that the UK, and particularly Scotland, as was evidence on Abby's slide, we are expert in some things. We've become kind of expert in fuel poverty because we have really poor quality housing. We have high number of degree days, i.e. the number of days when people need to have heating on in order to stay warm. And we also have a lot of households in severe income difficulty. And you put those combination of things together, you have a lot of people who are struggling. So sadly, the UK and Scotland, I feel we particularly have become somewhat expert in trying to reach some of those houses. So, and the people who live in them. So I'll describe firstly the framework and the setup we have in Scotland, and then how we use it to try and reach the fuel poor. So Home Energy Scotland, I'm going to say those words quite a few times in the next 5 minutes. Home Energy Scotland is a programme that we run on behalf of the Scottish Government. So it's a Scottish Government-owned programme that Energy Saving Trust delivers on its behalf. It's grown out of advice centre work that Energy Saving Trust has been doing for all parts of the UK for almost 20 years, if not more now. But it's kind of evolved over the time. It's very much a one-stop shop, so it's designed to provide services for people of any income level, whatever they're looking to do, whether they're trying to actually get they have a great big house and they've got an architect in and they're going to do a big renovation and a conversion and get renewables in, or whether they are an old pensioner householder on their own in a rented flat and really struggling to make ends meet. So it does the full spectrum. So rich and poor, and we provide high quality advice for any householder in Scotland who wants to contact us. The setup is that Scotland, although small in comparison to a lot of your countries, geographically is still quite a big place. There's a lot of territory to cover. We have 5 regional advice centres, and that's a compromise between having lots of, maybe 30 or 40 individual little local advice centres on the ground and one single big centre that covers all of Scotland. 5 is a good compromise because then people know the area they work in, which is important to people in Scotland, that they understand the locality. We cover these main sort of themes. So I've mentioned some of these already, but also things like water efficiency, where there's a big overlap with the cost of living and big savings can be made. Things like sustainable transport and affordable warmth, the opposite to fuel poverty, but also critically connecting people with funding support. Abby mentioned journeys. We talk a lot about customer journeys inside Home Energy Scotland. Any individual customer journey will have a permutation of all of these bits somewhere in it. So it usually begins with some kind of an awareness raising. And I was really noting the comments earlier on that I think Alice was making about just the lack of resonance that a lot of the language we use has with people. We still have this problem as well. It's actually really quite difficult sometimes to give grant support away and to get funding support out to people who need it. They're just not aware of all of the stuff that we're talking about day in, day out. So we have to promote and get awareness. Once we've done that, then people will contact us, and this could be through the website, it can be online, through social media, and traditionally has been over the telephone, but a lot of face-to-face work as well. Then advice delivery, and then what we're trying to do is actually get people to take action. It's no good just having that initial conversation. We need people who don't understand what their problem is to start with, to understand the problem and then understand how they can actually act and resolve that problem. So that's the kind of endpoint, and then moving that on to then actually being able to take action. So that will be about behavioural measures, really understanding what they can do with what they've already got, setting heating controls, understanding their meter readings, really basic stuff like this, to actually also understanding maybe how this new heat pump that someone has installed is actually going to work. And then we follow that up with further advice, because one single bit of advice, I can't remember what someone said to me 3 months ago. If someone rings me up again and does a follow-up, that really helps. It's a reminder and it actually makes sure that everything is happening as it should. Out of the far end come, we've all been talking about energy savings today. Our priorities for Scottish Government are really around carbon savings and also tackling the number of households in fuel poverty. So we need fuel bill savings as well. So that's the setup, and then this is about targeting fuel poor households. And so there are 3 kind of dimensions that we have here. One is income, location, and then the actual lived situation, which again Abby mentioned a minute ago. Income critical, and we can actually help people significantly with income. That's actually referring them to getting benefits checks and income support checks to make sure that they're able to claim all the income they can. And frequently people are missing this stuff. I can't remember our percentage, but there's quite a high uptick rate for people who we can then refer to an income check and they get some extra income. That's important for 2 reasons. 1, it can help them pay those bills a little bit better. 2, it actually, if they're claiming various benefits, those are like little passports into some of the schemes and support that's available. So it's really important that we get them registered for those benefits. Location and energy efficiency. We have really good data in Scotland, and we have some modelling tools. We use a tool that we've developed ourselves called Home Analytics, and that can give us down to almost pretty much individual address level the exact energy efficiency of a person's property based on all the data sets we have. And if we don't know it exactly already from EPCs and house condition surveys and so on, we can predict it with a very high degree of accuracy. So about 90% or more than 90% accuracy, we can predict the energy efficiency of a house. We can overlay that with income data, so we understand where people who are on low incomes live. And by the time you have all of that, you then have a very good take on exactly who is where and where the highest incidences of fuel poverty are. But actually, best of all, are these partnerships. So the people who are in fuel poverty will know that whether they may not know whether they fit the definition, but they will know whether they're struggling. So through partnerships, if you choose partnerships well, you can actually find people in fuel poverty very directly and very easily. So it's about the choice of partnerships. So Home Energy Scotland, we have literally thousands of active partnerships on the go at any time. Some are national, some are very much local. And they will be through a range of organisations. Where what I've shown here is a portal that we developed for all of our partner organisations, so that someone who is maybe a health worker who visits a household, they may see that they're struggling. They will also likely have a tablet or some laptop that they're already recording that data on. They can just simply log onto our portal while they're there, whack in that householder's name with their agreement, and that generates a call from one of our advisors to give them a call. And the key thing about that is that referral for that householder to call us, or for us to call them, is coming from someone that householder trusts. If you don't have that trust, the conversation is over. You can advertise, but people will just be too scared to do anything. You may, I don't know whether you have this in other countries outside the United Kingdom, but certainly United Kingdom, it was mentioned earlier, there's a lot of fraud in schemes, and we need to do everything we can to stamp that out, and getting those referrals through trusted sources is critical. So the types of organisations we work with, I mean, obviously these are very specific British and Scots examples, but charities that support householders who have just had a cancer diagnosis. Suddenly their fuel bills will go right up and their income will go right down. So that is a very, very good charity to work with. You can support them, they can make referrals of each of their clients and they can send them through to you. We have advice services offering advice for all kinds of things like housing and legal advice. So the Citizen Advice Service in Scotland is a very powerful source of referrals. Many others, health services, fire services, they're often doing visits to people in homes where they're vulnerable, and they can make excellent referrals. We also use energy carers. So where a householder is identified as vulnerable, really needs help, but would really struggle to actually pick up the phone and talk to someone, and we can send someone out to go and visit them. So this is a bit like a healthcare worker, but they're prescribing energy, they're prescribing warmth, and they will actually get inside the householder's house, sit down, have a cup of tea, go through the family photograph album, and then actually the trust is there and off they go. They can begin to make a referral and make things happen. So we now have energy carers working out of each of the advice centres all across Scotland, helping some of the hardest to reach and the most vulnerable householders. And what we found in that is that one of the key problems is not energy efficiency at all. You have to take care of other stuff first before you can deal with energy efficiency. So you may have really chronic disrepair in that house. There may be a roof falling in, we've had that, or walls which are really damp and bad condensation, not because they can't heat the home, but because of structural dampness, those kinds of things. It may just be the house needs to be completely cleared before any plumber can get in and install any kind of new heating. So it's a lot of non-energy type work that needs to happen before we get there. Abby mentioned the Warm Home Scotland, the Warm Home scheme in Wales. We have a similar scheme in Scotland. This is the Warmer Homes Scotland scheme. And again, this is a Scottish Government scheme. It's one of a number of places we can refer households in fuel poverty. We are typically referring about 13,000 households for this each year now, and they can get anything between 5,000 up to 20,000 pounds in sterling in terms of support, and that could be it'll be packages of work. So it'll be insulation, it'll be heating, draft proofing, controls, the full package. And the idea is that it actually takes those households out of fuel poverty. So typically they're saving many hundreds of pounds a year after they've had their housing sorted. And you're not just sorting out the people, you're actually sorting out the lowest quality housing stock at the same time. There are other schemes in Scotland that we refer to as well. Local authorities have a lot of good schemes. There is the Eco scheme, which you heard about this morning, which is where the obligation kicks in. So Eco 4, we're now working with that. And that can produce very significant sums of money for individual houses as well, where it's needed. So what does that all add up to? To give you a kind of thumbnail sketch of Scotland, Home Energy Scotland work. So in an average year, we will speak to about 130, 140,000 different householders in Scotland. We'll save 500,000 tonnes of carbon dioxide. That's usually at the rate of about 2,000 calls a week, but sometimes it's much more than that. Sometimes it's less, and that's only the calls. That doesn't take account of the face-to-face and the email traffic and that kind of thing. And within that, sadly, about half of those now will be fuel poor. Or even if they're not technically fuel poor, they are people who are severely worried about their income and their fuel bills and that kind of situation. So often people's concern about fuel poverty is actually bigger than the technical definition, but it's still very much there. That 65,000 fuel poor household number used to be much smaller for us in Scotland. We used to have about 30,000. So that's a result of the fuel crisis and kind of where we're at the moment. Yeah, so that's it. We have about 250 staff working on this across Scotland. And the reason for giving you that number is that what it actually goes to show is that it's quite resource intensive getting these referrals and getting householders advised. You can't just put up a website and hope that's going to do the job. It needs a lot of people and it needs a lot of direct engagement in order for that to happen. You'll be glad to know that's it.
Well, stay there. Thank you so much, Harry and Abby. That was a really fascinating presentation. And actually, I was jotting down questions, and you basically answered them as you did your presentation. Well, I can ask a question, but I'd really like people from the floor to raise their hands if they do have questions. Apart from Jean-Sébastien. Yes.
So in your presentation, you were talking about the household that doesn't take the income checks and that a lot of those checks that could help them are not taken. So are you taking any initiatives in order to prevent them, to tell the population that are given these checks, that are given this possibility? And if it's the case, can you tell us at what point it's actually worked and if those people could afford to buy those reductions?
Okay.
Oh yeah. I'm an entrepreneur in reducing the energy consumption in France.
Thank you. It's a really good. Oh, sorry. It's a really good question, and I don't have a really good answer for you. We know it works on an individual level. When we speak to a householder, we can often find, and I think, you know, it's the percentage of householders who aren't claiming benefits, who we advise, who we are able to get an additional benefit. I can check the number out for you, but it's probably in the order of sort of 20%. It's that sort of number. So it's still significant of, you know, 100, you know, several hundred, you know, 100,000+ households a year. There's still, you know, 10,000, maybe 20,000 households that we're talking to where we can achieve some kind of uplift of their benefit. And when we do, Energy Saving Trust does evaluation on all of its programs. We have an independent evaluation team who then employ independent consultants. So it's arm's length. We don't influence the results. But we did some assessment of the impact of where, you know, how much was that extra income that people were getting. And it's in several £100s. So in some cases, you know, it's going up to sort of £700 or £800 additional income each year. And when a household has a low income already, that's actually quite a significant number. We haven't done that since, excuse me, since pre-COVID, COVID and coronavirus. We haven't done it since the fuel crisis. So my guess is all of those numbers will probably have changed. But there is definitely an impact there. We know from an individual kind of qualitative data basis that there's big impact. In terms of getting the message out, the second part of your question on advertising, that's harder. We have We have a good budget in terms of, compared to many places in terms of the amount of resource we have, but we do not have big advertising budgets. And like many organisations employed by governments, it's kind of not our place to advertise. The Scottish Government do their own advertising sometimes. They haven't yet done a benefits take-up campaign specifically for this, but we hope that might come. The situation is also slightly complicated in that there are, in the UK, United Kingdom, there are things which are controlled by the Westminster government, the government in London that covers all of the UK, and there are things which are devolved. So Scotland has a number of its own powers that it can deliver. And so with benefits, there has just in the last couple of years been a new office set up in Scotland to deal with welfare payments. So the Social Security Scotland office has been set up and they're just getting going. We are working closely with them because they're obviously speaking to hundreds of thousands of householders every year about their benefits. And if we can get the messaging out through them, I think that will be really powerful.
Hi, it's Emer from SSE Ireland. I was just looking at the Warmer Homes Scotland scheme, and it was just saying that all applications had to go through the Home Energy Scotland. I was wondering, is that a scheme that you're solely running, or is it in conjunction, and is it kind of an efficiency approach, or I just wanted to learn a bit more about that.
Good question. The reason, so Home Energy Scotland is the gateway for Warmer Homes Scotland. Warmer Homes Scotland is a completely separate programme, so it has its own separate budget from Scottish Government. We don't run it, but we will work very closely with the Warmer Homes Scotland team. It's just started again after a gap of about 5 months because one contract, which had run for 5 years, came to an end in March. Tendering process had to complete, and then the new contract up and running from 4 weeks ago, October. And the managing agent is the same managing agent as they were before, Warmworks, but they got reappointed, so they're running a new scheme. The reason why there's this kind of gateway approach rather than just, don't call us, call Warm Home Scotland, is because the thinking when it was first set up was that households need advice along the way. They need advice around, what their situation is, what the measures that may best suit them are, talking them through it, doing all those kind of tricky bits like making sure they've claimed benefits and things before they apply for Warm Home Scotland, because we find that there are a lot of households won't qualify first time round. If we can pick them up again, we can often help them get them over through the door. By checking various other things and making things happen. So we're a kind of, a useful sort of front end for the scheme, if you like.
Right. Thank you so much anyway, Abby and Harry. We're going to have to move on next because we have our final speaker of the day, Stuart from SSE. So Jean-Sébastien is just going to set a video going, I understand. But Stuart Hobbs is from SSE Airtricity Ireland, and you're one of the obligated parties, right, in the scheme in Ireland. So
give me 1 second.
We're just going to get the video going.
Yes.
No pressure, Jean-Sébastien.
Just reminds me for the. I just need to put the sound for the ones that are online. So sorry, that's why it's just 1 second more. It works. Fingers crossed.
Well, Beaufort is here since 1984. It's a very attractive, much sought after accommodation for older people. 58 individual residences here by the sea in Sandy Cove. So it's wonderful to see the new changes that are coming about here. Beaufort is a very innovative project for Dún Laoghaire-Rathdown County Council. We use a district heating system for 58 residences for senior citizens, and at the same time we're meeting our climate action targets.
SSE were working with Dún Laoghaire-Rathdown County Council in upgrading 58 social and affordable housing units here in the Beaufort complex. Our role is to help actually local authorities in simplifying the delivery of their retrofit programme. We recognise that it's a significant challenge for many local authorities in terms of the scale and complexity of the works that need to be done. And what we offer is a turnkey solution to make that role much simpler and easier for the local authorities, engaging with them to deliver the best upgrade and lowest cost units for the local authority.
We've new windows and doors, we put in external insulation, solar panels, LED lighting and new heating systems. And we've brought these properties up from an E rating up to an A3 rating. We're delighted to work with SSE Airtricity on this retrofit programme. We're delighted to work with them in terms of their expertise and their contacts and their support.
It is cosier. There was a desperate draft on that door and that's all gone. The heat and being able to regulate it, wonderful, it's excellent.
This project in Beaufort is district heating system, so it's a cascading system of 8 heat pumps that services the entire 58 homes. And what's different here really is that the Department of Housing, Local Government and Heritage was providing a system whereby we would provide heat pumps in individual apartments or houses. So this way we were able to halve that cost by providing the cascading system that we did. And the department agreed to that on a pilot basis. So it's the first of its kind in the country.
Well, I think the whole world now knows the importance of climate change and of tackling the problems. So it doesn't matter what age you are, and I think older people are as conscious as anybody else. And this project in retrofitting is ensuring that it fits into our climate action plan for Dún Laoghaire-Rathdown County Council. And in that plan, we are changing and upgrading our lighting and our heating. Beaufort is a very innovative project, and we in Dún Laoghaire-Rathdown County Council are very proud of it. It looks well, it feels well, and the 58 senior citizens are very happy in their homes.
So just while John Sebastian is changing, that's just an example of one of the projects that SSE has done in Ireland. And I suppose the reason why we wanted to show that was to give context of, kind of say, Aileen gave context this morning. We've been very much kind of focused for the first part of our obligation schemes around shallow, doing as much work as possible, no regret moves. But largely what we're moving to now is kind of say how we transition to more of a deep retrofit model in Ireland, how we're really going deeper into the value chain and how we're making sure that we're getting those deeper interventions which are going to really drive the changes in support. And again, I was interested this morning because a lot of this morning was focused on energy suppliers and trying to do the least amount possible, and obligated parties are trying to get away with everything here. And I think I want to give it a bit of a different context as an obligated party, but also as an energy supplier in this regard, because I think, you know, it's conveyed that obligations are seen as a burden on energy companies and retailers, but in some ways, actually, it's not. It's a change in dynamic and expectation of a retailer in the market at the moment. I've been in energy for 25 years, and for the first, I would say, 20 years of my working in energy and in the energy retail space and supply side, all we ever did was sell bills to customers' homes. But the expectation and the customer relationship has completely changed, certainly the last 5 years, whether it be around kind of say the climate change agenda and or say the climate crisis and obviously the cost of living crisis, to the point now where the expectation of a customer is much more, how are you helping me achieve net zero? How are you helping me get to the end goal? Our obligation is kind of say an ancillary upside to that in terms of we can use this support of customers in a way of delivering our obligation, but in some ways we're actually we're becoming less of a supplier and more of a solutions provider as an organization. So part of what I'm going to talk about today is, well, what are we doing in SSE to do that? And what have we learned over the last, say, number of years in achieving that? Well, mostly it's about kind of providing accessibility. We've used mostly the term that we want to kind of democratize this as much as possible. We operate in fuel poor schemes, we operate in private market schemes, we operate in conjunction with the government, but we're trying to make it as accessible as possible to as many people as possible. We also recognise that it needs to be affordable. So again, we work in terms of driving down cost. We provide kind of say transparent procurement processes for all the services we provide, and we want to make sure it's accessible. A lot of what was talked about this morning was kind of say a quality of that. So for example, we want to make sure that the services that we provide to say those in fuel poverty and vulnerability are no less diminished by the fact that those we provide to people in private customers' owner occupier sense. Education has been mentioned a lot. Empowerment, certainly in terms of how we ensure that people can get access to these, easily understood and can get it. And also that it's seen as credible and tangible impacts, that it's not just lip service or greenwashing as often suppliers are talked about, but we're actually delivering genuine, tangible impacts. And I think the most important thing that we've learned over the last while is, and I think it's something we need to be very careful of as more broadly as a supplier and a market, is that technology innovation. Things change really quickly, and what we believe to be true today in terms of the innovation we should be using. So heat pumps are very de rigueur at the moment, but who's to say that's not going to be something new into the future? And we need to not take fixed positions and be landed on those for forever. And certainly the biggest challenge we have over the last while is around people, and that's going to say how we bring people along in society, but also the people who are going to deliver this transition. Just a little bit about SSE PLC. So I work for SSE PLC, and as a PLC, we are the first, and we're the first company in the world to produce a just transition strategy. We very much believe in kind of saying making sure that this transition raises all boats and not just some. We want to make sure that, you know, those who pay and there's equity to those who pay and those who benefit. We want to make sure it's accessible, affordable, and we advocate for fairness. Bringing it back then to an Irish context, as an obligated party, we have transitioned to be a solutions business. So across the board, we will be delivering over 40,000 deep retrofits over the next 10 years. That's our ambition. What does that mean, and how does that contextualise what the ambition for Ireland is? Ireland as a whole has a target between now and 2030 to deliver 500,000 homes retrofitted to a B standard over the next 10 years. That will put us probably, if we deliver those kind of volumes, as the largest contributor to the decarbonisation of the built environment in Ireland, if we achieve those kind of numbers. What does that mean from where we stand today? From where SSE stands today in terms of delivering that, roughly today we deliver about 1,000 deep retrofits a year across all of our programs. We would do roughly about kind of say 3,500 to 4,000 solar PV installations. Next year we'll roll out 27 EV hubs, and we will probably do somewhere in the region of 2,500 to 3,000 EV charging installations. So from where we are today, to get to that kind of number, we need to be doubling our output year on year, every year between now and 2027. And that's a significant amount of oomph and effort that's required. And it's moving beyond just our obligation scheme to actually seeing this as a general way of doing business going forward. This will be as important as our supply business into the future, these services that we provide to our customers. And the constraint at the moment is we need to be doubling our contract and partnership capacity. So Harry talked about partnerships being key to this. This transition from our perspective is no different. We need to have as many contracting partnerships, fully qualified, fully vetted and fully onboarded into our standards, both in terms of safety, but also in terms of quality over the next 3 years. And we'll be doubling that capacity each year for the next 4 years. We're also significantly investing in our own internal competences, again, in terms of quality standards. We worked really closely with the likes of the SEI in terms of ensuring that we're an accredited one-stop shop. We were the first accredited one-stop shop in Ireland. Actually, well, the debate between us and core retrofit, but I think we'll say that we were the first retrofit in our visit. And also we have a business in Northern Ireland, and we're looking to roll it there. And also in Q2 of next year, we'll be rolling out a one-stop shop for B2B as well. So in other words, supporting businesses, which is a much more complex endeavour, but we'll be supporting them as well. And back to how we reach the fuel poor customers. So the piece about kind of say the additionality of what we bring, the materiality of what we bring in the delivery of our obligation is through the services we provide mainly to local authorities and housing associations in Ireland. And the trade-off for the carbon savings or the credit savings that we accrue from this is we provide them with a full turnkey solution to support them in the ambitions that they have. A lot of times what you find with the likes of local authorities and with housing associations, there's a reticence and a nervousness. They're not quite sure what to do, how to do it. They're not very good at procurement. They're not as agile with procurement. And also they want to kind of say they don't know how to get from here to there. So we're kind of supporting that. So at the moment, we provide a full turnkey solution for project management end to end. We do all of the design aspects of all of the work on their behalf. So we make sure we bring in the right level of quality. We procure and tender all of the works on their behalf. So in other words, what we do is we then give them a full transparent pass-through cost on that. we provide all those services through a mix of kind of say the trade-off with the carbon savings and the credits that are achieved through that program, with a small project management fee tied in as well. So that's how we then provide those services. What gives them comfort is we take on all of the obligations in terms of safety delivery of those projects. We take on all the obligations in terms of liabilities and compliance. We fully bridge finance all of the works right to the end delivery point, which again gives us skin in the game to make sure it's done right, to the right quality standards, and we are fully involved. And we do all of the M&V, and everything is done on a pre and post basis. We do a full pre-assessment of where the homes are starting from, and in line with the new standards within the EOS obligation, all houses must have a minimum 100 kilowatt hours per meter squared uplift and must get to that B standard rating at the end. We support the housing associations again with all the administrative aspects of this, with all the claims that they can make to the housing departments, with all the claims they might want to make in terms of the paperwork, the verification and the follow-ups. And what we also do is, again, because some of these are our customers as well, we provide them with ongoing client support in terms of, say, liabilities, follow-up services as well. So it's a full end-to-end service. And we see this as the type of model and service that energy utilities need to be providing in the future, is moving from supplier to solutions provider. I won't go through this. This is basically just a full model of all the areas of how we define the works with the local authority, how we provide an independent procurement process for all the works that are done, the services we then do in terms of project procurement management, all major project management in terms of all safety elements, delivery of works, contractor management, and then we do all the health and safety aspects as well. Again, these may not mean much to people in the room. These are all very much Irish-based organisations and institutions, but we work with, there's roughly about kind of 27 local authorities in Ireland who own all of the housing stock in terms of social housing in Ireland. We work with all of them and reach out to all of them to provide these services. It's not just us, they work with other one-stop shops and other bodies as well. But I think we're the only utility today that's currently working with local authorities in the actual delivery of these services. But we work with a lot of housing associations, and we also work with a lot of charities as well in terms of the housing stocks that they have. I've shown the video already, so this was supposed to be later in this presentation, but we couldn't get to work, so John Sebastian had the best idea to move it forward. In terms of talking about this in the context of the obligation, so again, we've moved beyond seeing the obligation as a burden to actually utilising as an asset for ourselves to support moving further into the value chain and supporting customers in the net zero journey. But there are still some challenges in terms of this. So, and again, Aileen gives some context about the change of the market and the changing of the scheme between the two. What we find is that 27 different local authorities, and like you found this morning, there's lots of obligated parties who all do things differently. Nation states do things differently. Local authorities are no different. They all operate in different cycles, different ways. So not every local authority or AHB have a clear understanding of what the obligation scheme is and how they can use it to their best advantage. And sometimes there's an element of mistrust, as was conveyed, about obligated parties having some kind of hidden agenda here. So a lot of times we're trying to break down the barrier of, we're genuinely trying to help you. We can use the obligation scheme to your benefit, and you can get these services which can supplement your own internal competence deficits that you don't have in your own business. The other thing that Aileen talked about this morning was the changing from our old obligation scheme to the new obligation scheme. That has been a challenge, and I won't lie about it, mainly because it has kind of, I suppose, been a kind of a jarring factor in terms of kind of new understanding, what the new scheme rules changed, and that interrupted output, I would say, for a period of time. We're probably getting back to it now, but there's again a bit of education has to happen there. So I'd say we've seen a bit of kind of 6-month pause in what was required. The other big challenge in Ireland is we are massively short on resources. I'm sure it's the same in many other nations in the EU at the moment. But again, we have a massive skills deficit and we have massive competing priorities. So we've got a new build market where we should be delivering about kind of say 40,000 new homes a year. We're delivering about 20. So there's a mix of balance between skills and trades. We're trying to convey retrofit as kind of say sustainable jobs for the future and moving skilled trades people into this area because the new builds market is quite cyclical, up and down. We're kind of saying this is a 20 to 30 year program and you should be looking to move into here, but there is competing priorities. Also, the definitions have kind of changed, and Aileen talked about it again this morning in relation to how we define kind of say the income values, but also kind of say it must be below a D2 rating of a home. And again, we also think that there is some challenges there because there are potentially some genuine fuel poor homes that sit between the D2 rating and the B3 rating that we potentially are missing. Now, you had to put a stake in the ground somewhere, but I do think we need to maybe think about if there are other interventions can support them as well. And And then the other thing, and there's other schemes that run in Ireland. So, for example, there's a Warmer Home scheme, which is a fully funded scheme for those in fuel poverty, but also have maybe certain health criteria and conditions and are supported by some kind of welfare payment. Obligated parties don't currently participate in that scheme. It's one of the largest social housing schemes in Ireland, fully funded. We're not participating. We definitely see that as an opportunity, and we think there's more we can do. And we just need to figure out how to make sure that we're both additional and material in that. And if we can crack that nut, I think there's a real opportunity for obligated parties to really play a part in that as well. So that's just a bit of a whistle-stop tour of what SSE does and how we participate with both as an obligated party and as a net zero champion.
Well, thank you so much, Stuart. That was another fascinating presentation. So now I'm going to open to the floor again for questions. And this time, if Jean-Sebastian does have a question, I will let him ask it. But well, okay, I'm going to ask a question then. Take my privilege as the chair. So, and it's kind of it really goes to the whole room actually. And one of the themes I've noticed from today is the issue over skills and availability of not just labour in construction, but the need to go through trusted actors to reach target groups. You need auditors. We need civil servants. We heard about places where there's just basically not enough people in the regulator working on these schemes. So it just seems like there's a whole bevy of people that need to start working in these areas. And we know obviously in the past, the idea of green jobs has been a big driver, right? Or at least one of the things that we've trumpeted about the energy transition. But it seems to me actually there's a scarcity of labour. So I guess it's a question for you, Stuart. You're at the sharp end here, having to deliver these projects. Yeah. You're expecting probably to see an increase in your obligation. So what's your experience actually of finding labour? So
in Ireland, it's been a bit of a challenge. So obviously we've moved from kind of high construction, building 100,000 houses a year, and then we had the crash. And then suddenly construction became a bit of a risky place to be in. I think the other big problem, and Wolfgang's gone now, but I did have a conversation with Wolfgang earlier about, there's also a challenge. In Ireland, we are kind of a highly educated, somehow overly educated kind of society where we have lots of people moving into college educations. And one of the kind of quick key distinctions I gave is we have lots of people working in our call centres, doing really good work. We're getting paid about 30,000, 35,000 a year. We have guys installing and girls installing solar panels in Ireland, earning 65 to 70,000 euros per year. And we need to be changing the frame of reference as to how we view skilled trades and streaming young talent into these areas. So I think it is about kind of a campaign and understanding and education people and moving away from the snobbery of a university education is the only way to go in a modern democratic society.
Yeah, white collar jobs are a thing of the past, right? With AI, so you want to get out there and get your hands dirty.
Thanks a lot, Stuart, and I like very much your answer that there has been also, I think, in France, a campaign to make the jobs in the construction sector more attractive. But okay, at some point it has to be about wages as well. I mean, having nice videos showing how cool is it to make renovation, that for the future generation to engage in these works. That's nice, but if they are paid properly, maybe that would help to have more people as well. My question is different. That's related to some discussion there were yesterday. So yesterday there was the French seminar on, the national seminar of the French white certificate scheme. And my understanding was from the question from the audience that there were different groups developing different types of things. And in particular, that's related to the something, and that's also for you, Ari and Abby, you build partnership with local authorities, and there are things like that in France, but I also heard that there are some competition sometimes between what the local authorities try to develop on their end or other, let's say, some kind of public service for support, and what obligated parties or their contractors or eligible parties or delegated parties, depending on how they are called in the schemes, and they not necessarily see the, let's say, what they offer to to the households in the same way. So do you see more synergies or more competitions or even opposition between the two? Because, and I would be happy to hear from the French stakeholders what they think about that, because that was my impression yesterday, that there were more in the French scheme, sometimes more opposition than synergies.
Between local authorities, each other, or?
No, between, let's say, the public side of providing support, energy advice, and one-stop shops, and the private sector.
Well, it's funny actually, because we're trying to advocate for the development of kind of say an energy efficiency scheme and obligation in Northern Ireland. Because actually, you talk about the UK, it's probably one of the parts of the UK that's most left behind in terms of this transition for lots of political reasons, and we're trying to advocate for it. So certainly at the moment, most of the thinking is around, and we hear from the UK example this morning, solely focusing on the fuel poor market, right? But what we have clearly advocated for in a Northern Irish context is you need to actually provide democratized options and optionality for all parts of the market, because that's when organizations like ours start to invest, start to build out our organizations. If you're only serving one part of the market, one, it's kind of, it's diminishing return after a time, and you'll never get the kind of economies of scale and the broader reach. And that kind of cross-scaling of competence, this cross-scaling of opportunity, scaling out kind of say, call centers, back office support can be done in a more efficient way if you're serving all parts of the market. So we are advocating, and in Irish context, I think we've actually done it quite well in Southern Ireland. I think actually we do look at that, and certainly as SSE looks at it in Ireland, we look at it as synergistic as opposed to competing. So we would advocate for the same piece in Northern Ireland. I'm not sure I can speak for other European organisations, but certainly in Ireland, I think we've done it quite well in that regard.
Okay, so let's hear from Harry on that point.
Just kind of to echo what you were saying, Stuart. I mean, I think we have very similar situation in Scotland, where there is actually in some ways quite a lot of money chasing not enough fuel poor households who are immediately eligible and available for support. One of the points that I probably didn't make very well, or didn't make at all in my slides, but I should have done, is that our advisors are very, it's impartial. We don't favour one particular scheme. Every household who speaks to us, we will set out all of the funding options that are available. The household then needs to make their choice about what's best for them. But I think a plea from us would be, can we please do something to simplify the landscape a bit, so that it's easier for households just to kind of go, yeah, right, just get me all of that. And then, organizations, very much your last bullet on that slide, organizations maybe like us or others can actually take care of all the complicated stuff behind the scenes, where we can blend different sources of funding and make things happen, so that all of the funding that is available can be put to use. Because otherwise it's a nonsense if you have programs that are trying to spend money that can't spend money, and you have households in desperate need. There's got to be a way of better ways we can help simplify and bring those things together. So I'm not quite sure what the answer is there. I mean, I can think of some answers, but I think that's really the key problem, because the obligation has a huge role to play in all of this. It can really help deliver big money, but I think if it's there just adding to the competition to try and find those houses and get to them first, it's confusing rather than helping.
Maybe I'm adding on the what I mean by opposition, because maybe that was not completely clear. That's not only chasing the energy poor, as you say, that's more that you have on the one hand some part of the players, and on that part you have more, I would say, partnership with local authorities doing that, trying to support deep retrofit. That's the French scheme, because I understand that in Ireland you have already solved the problem by removing the single actions, right, from the scheme. Maybe that's a suggestion to consider. Yeah, I don't know, but that would be quite a change in France if they do that. So you have that part, promoting deep renovation, and that's hard. You need time to do it. That's long-term involvement, etc. And sometimes on the same territory, you have a big company coming and they do all, let's say, the loft insulation. And after that, how do you make your case cost-effective for deep renovation? So that's the kind of opposition I was mentioning. So I don't know.
And certainly in the Irish context, it's helped by having a standardized approach, kind of say minimum uplifts, getting to the B2, regardless of whether you're on a fully funded warmer homes program, whether you're working under EERP, or whether you're working as a private homeowner moving forward.
Maybe that's a question to the French stakeholders, how they would see a change in France similar to the one in Ireland to remove the single actions from the schemes in the residential sector.
Probably a precision.
I just wanted to say something more generally, because obviously the recast, we're moving to this energy poverty share. And there's the two ways of calculating that, whether it's your own methodology or using the indicators. And Ireland, where we would feel like beyond the EOS and the energy poverty share, we have a lot of programs, and we focus on probably around 5% of our savings that we're reporting currently across the board are related to energy poor. And we would feel that we're quite progressive in that space. But I think the problem, and we've raised this, I know that the Commission have left now, we've raised this directly with them, is obviously the energy poverty share as it's calculated is looking at your percentage of residential and what percentage is in energy poverty, and then applying it to the full Article 8 target, which is obviously not the residential aspect. So I won't give our numbers necessarily, but you could have someone who has a 20% energy poverty rate, so that's your 20% of your residential consumption. But now it's being applied to the full target. And we have raised this about, maybe was it a miscalculation? You know, was it intended? Because I think what all the presentations are showing is, you know, the Article 8 is so much about, it's increased by 44% now with the recast. It's showing that it's such a huge volume of savings that we have to achieve, but energy poverty has to be handled with care, because it's more than just energy savings. It's about very vulnerable customers. So I know, like the point, the recast, you know, we're here, we have to get on with it. But I do think with energy poverty, it's such a different handling compared to other energy savings, and it's going to be very challenging. And this is us being progressive, and Stuart has shown in that video, you know, we're trying to do the best, but we possibly have to double what we're doing now, not through, don't panic, not through the EOS necessarily, but through alternative measures as well. And I just think it's such a huge task for member states, this energy poverty share. And you know, maybe it's vulnerable, it's not just energy poverty, there's a long list of who's in that group. But I think, yeah, it's very significant what we have to do. And I don't know, Sam or John Sebastian, if you have views on that as well, because you've obviously looked at it. It's just a point, sorry, not being over.
Well, I can't speak for the Commission about what they understood or did not, but my feeling is that they did. That's my feeling, and that that they really do want member states to not just have a fair share, you might say, for the energy poor group, but to really focus on prioritizing that group, because one of the main determinants of energy poverty is the poor state of the housing stock. So that it was a conscious decision. Yeah, so yeah. Okay, what about France? Would anyone want to come in and say something about the French situation? Any similarities or, yeah, thank you, Stu. Laure, okay. Bit of arm twisting.
So I'm not from the residential sector, but we have an approach that like we have a lot of history with energy poverty, like trying to target energy poor households. So I guess the approach was to have energy poor targeted white certificates that are an entire other market and that have a price that is higher than the classic ones, because it's more difficult, I guess, to target energy poor households. So maybe like mechanically that made financial incentive to go towards energy poor households, but it's still a bit a big challenge in France. So I don't think we have like clear answers.
Thank you, Laure. But just to, I mean, to think about the French situation, right? It's a 25% target, is that right? But the French White Certificate program is all of the EED savings. So in fact, in France, although it's 25% of the certificates, right? So, and there are lots of uplifts as well involved in on the energy poor side. So maybe it's 20%, but you know, it would be equivalent, I think, probably to the target calculation, or at least equivalent to what you'd need probably under the Energy Efficiency Directive. So I think you're showing it is possible. And of course, in the UK, we have 100% dedicated to the energy, although the energy company obligation is only a relatively small part of the suite of measures that are delivered in the UK. What about the anyone in France want to talk about the white certificates that you can get in France for supporting actions? So these are not for energy savings, right? But they're for helping obligated parties to target.
In French, that would be programme, the programme d'accompagnement. No, just.
Sorry, I can't hear.
That's.
Yeah, the programs, yeah. So how useful are these as a mechanism for helping obligated parties to deliver on their sub-target for energy poor?
So in France, there are different way to reach fuel poverty. A household, like any household, can have access to white certificate and receive incentive, and if they provide enough information, especially as a level of income, they can transform the average white certificate in fuel certificate, fuel poverty certificate. So it's only dependent on income, but there are also some contract between obligated or delegate parties between housing companies, for social housing companies. And so they also target people living, not rented a flat in social housing, and not for owners, but they are refurbished the building as the fuel household pays the bills of the energy bills. So they don't pay anything, but they receive the effect of the reducing of consumption. So it's two different things, because we are able to target the owners, also the rented.
Thanks a lot, Dominique. Thanks a lot, Dominique, and that's a bit like closing the loop. So you were opening you were opening the day this morning, and you will have the last words this afternoon.